MSA well project, that would be Justin. Thanks for coming, Steve.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I guess take off where we left off last time. I don't know if you guys have any more questions over anything from where we left it last time, but also got Nathan Casey over there. He's the engineer for us who worked on the Hubbard project. He did a new water treatment plant, water tower. So if he has anything he can add. If you want to talk with the electrical engineer, we can conference call him in. He couldn't make it tonight, but he said he'd definitely be open to a conference call. So I guess the first thing I would start out and add is that you guys had asked about the generator that the DNR is going to require you put in. And I think I forwarded that email to Marlene. Basically, her response says that she would prefer a fixed generator, but they can do a portable, the only condition being that it's at the water plant full-time and is dedicated to the water plant and the well, so it's available when power is out. And in parentheses, they're not used power lift stations. So that's the restrictions, but if you want to do it, that's up to you. So
You just made the comment that this was a DNR requirement.
yes.
Is this current DNR requirement?
Yeah.
So we're out of compliance at a particular time.
Yeah.
And why have they required it?
They don't always, I mean, there's probably plenty of things that you guys are out of compliance with, but it's, you know, nothing they catch on a regular basis as they come across these issues. They'll confront them when you go to update things. You can't borrow the state money to finance things like that unless you do some of these requirements and put those into your project. Got some new kind of estimates on here too that kind of address the different scenarios and also the financing method. If you want to use like a low interest loan through SRF, finance that, it breaks it down to show you what it would be per user per month for the city. So pass those on and we'll go over some of those too. See on the front page there, where it says item on the left to the right, there's kind of the three options there: the new well and the base electrical improvements, which is basically leaving things as it is. You'll leave the power, what's down in the well house, what's in the treatment plant, in the treatment plant, but it'd be make it code compliant is what that option was. The middle option, new well and the electrical improvements, is kind of the electrical engineer's recommended electrical improvements. Remember that involves the PLC and the MCC and some of those improvements, which we can go over too here in a little bit. And the third option was the computerized option. It's just there to let you guys know that it is an option, but probably nothing we looked at last time. We still included it. So if you go down into the financing category, SRF would be your state revolving fund, and that's using state money. It'd be a 20-year loan at 3.25% if you want to finance the project. And we kind of went through everything down there, broke it out, your principal and interest payments, total annual costs, and then broke it out per user. The first option, the annual cost per user is $61.60 or $5.13 a month per user. And the recommended electrical improvements that he has on there would come to $6.30 per month per user. And that's completely up to you guys if you wanted to fund it all out of state revolving fund. If you wanted to, you know, if you had cash on hand, you wanted to pay some of it down, that's up to you guys. So that's something we can work along as we go through. Typically what we involve in these numbers here is a construction cost on the top line, and the second line is contingency, engineering, and legal. For that we usually figure roughly a 20% contingency, 20% engineering fee, and a 1% legal. It's just kind of in there. Those are rough numbers to just make sure in the early stages of the project that you'll be covered for however we set up the financing. Those are usually all on the upper side of those realms. So we don't get to the end of the project and all of a sudden you guys are short money and it's a scramble to try and cover the project. And then the last number is the total capital cost of everything involved, the engineering, contingency, legal, and your construction costs. That's how we come to those full numbers. So for the first option it's $395,000, and for the, I guess the next step up is $485,000, which is your $6.30 per user per month. Each of these are kind of broke out in the next couple of pages. There's itemized cost estimates. Now do note that those aren't bids. That's not what the project's going to cost. That's basically the engineer's, probable guesstimation of what it'll be. It's our estimate where we base all the financing off of everything up front, how your fees would be adjusted and things like that. So that's by no means a bid. That's just to give you guys an idea of what we think it'll cost at this point. And we may find different things out as we get into the project that make it more complex, possibly add to it, possibly it's not as complex as what we think, but at this point that's what the information we have. Okay, is there any questions or anything yet? Or? And again, it's your guys' decision which route you want to go. Doesn't matter to us. The only thing we want to make sure is that you know up front what you're choosing, so that you don't get to the end of the project and you have something that you're not happy with, something you don't want. We want to make sure that you're covered for code compliance and things like that, so that when you get done with the project also there's no surprises. The electrical inspector comes in and says, well, this isn't going to work, you can't have this, and there's a change order to fix things up more. So that's what we're trying to lay out in front of you as far as these options go. Also, our fees aren't driven off. I know sometimes there's a misconception out there that architects do it a lot of times, that your fees are driven off a straight percentage of what the cost is. That's not the case with engineers. Typically, that's not how we do things. We assess it on basically an hourly impact, how many hours it'll take us to complete the project, times who's working on it, and figure rates out that way. So that's how we figure our fees.
Like it just comes out to 20%?
No, that's usually on the high side of engineering fees. Usually they're in between 10 and 20. So for the upfront stuff, we usually just figure it on the high side, you're covered. When you guys narrow down exactly what you want to do in this project, we'd come back with what our fee would be, and then you'd have a chance to approve that or not approve that. So
I guess we sit here and we got a ballpark number figure of 100,000 putting the well in, and we're going to spend almost 200,000 for electrical upgrades. It's kind of a little bit tough to swallow.
yeah. And a lot of that's due to the age of the facility, how many times it's been improved over the last couple of years, code changes, things like that. The other requirement that they're going to require you to have is that flow switch that we talked about last time, and that is required. You have to have the PLC, so it has something that it'll talk to in there so that can function. So that's another DNR requirement.
The PLC is a DNR requirement?
The PLC is not necessarily a requirement. You got to have the flow switch in there. So, and that's what the flow switch would hook into. That's basically a computer that
Sure.
runs everything.
And that's the only thing that flow switch can hook into?
As far as
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we're spending $35,000 on this PLC.
Well, the PLC does more than just talk.
I understand it. I don't know that we need all that it does either. That's that's why I'm asking these.
The DNR requires a flow switch because they've had issues in the past with the plant calling for water and the well pump not turning on. Which in that case, what happens is you start pumping water treatment chemicals into the line, and you get too much. You over chemical. There's too much chemicals in there. So the flow switch ensures that there's actually flow going through the pipe when it calls for water. That needs something to talk to that tells the pumps to turn on. That tells there might be cheaper options, but it does need something to communicate with. The flow switch with the chemical pumps, with the tower level, with the well pumps, with the booster pumps, and the pumps and the water treatment plant. Something needs to bring all these aspects together.
it's also with that would be your automatic dialer too.
You would also have an automatic dialer in there as
which
well.
you'll have to have.
It will also control when the automatic generator turns on. Well, there's an automatic transfer switch, but
so basically now I think your pumps are just hardwired in, so when the well draws power, they start pumping the chemical. And so like when your well breaks down, you're not getting anything, it's just pushing that chemical out in the system.
Straight
And when it
into
gets
the system.
fixed, you get that whole slug coming through at one push.
And that's
Has that ever happened?
Has it ever happened?
in town.
Yeah, in this town?
I believe so.
It happens in other towns all the time.
You just pumping straight chemical into the line?
Yeah, and it just, what it does is it pumps into a pipe and it just fills that pipe with water. So then with chemicals, so then when the pumps actually do turn on, when your operator goes down there and fixes whatever's keeping the pumps from running, you get a huge slug of chemical hitting the line, which can be bad, seeing you're adding fluoride and chlorine.
And you basically find out now that you're out of water when you get a phone call from somebody, is that?
Right.
Yeah. So,
Right now we use day tanks, which is required by the DNR too, so you only pump
So
so many gallons when it does that, but it's still.
if he keeps a month worth of chemicals online, that's another safety feat. That way he can only pump 1 day's worth of chemical into that line if that does happen, instead of a month's worth of chemical if it runs all night.
and the PLC will do a lot of, I mean, you can set when you want to pump to fill your tower. If that has anything to do with your rates, you know, you can set it to pump at night, you can set it wintertime, summertime levels in the tower, things like that, that can control a lot of that. Keep track of your chemical feeds, if you set it up to do that. So basically the main difference between the 1 and 2 is basically number 2, you're getting all your power up the treatment plant. You're centering everything out of there. You just had an issue with your other well, so if and when that one would ever go down, you could put that well anywhere, you bring the power back to the treatment plant, you'd have everything centered out of there. Now you've got some down at the well house, some up at the treatment plant. With your generator, it'd be a lot easier to have it run both wells. Everything comes out of the treatment plant.
The base electrical upgrades, you wouldn't be able to run both wells with the emergency generator. You'd only be able to run one.
So basically going back to your question, Rob, I know you asked about the MCC last time, and if we took everything up into the treatment plant, you know, now you walk in there and you'll see everything on the wall. When we move it all up into the treatment plant, that would come in as one set box. It's done at the factory, and it's set, and you hook everything into that, as opposed to putting it all on the wall. It'll make your transition easier when you go to switch things over. Also, if you do use SRF to fund this now, you have to pay the predetermined wages, which is a higher wage. So also you'd run into some of that too. The laborers on site are going to get paid more money to sit there and wire it by hand, as opposed to getting it from the factory pre-made, set it there and hook it in, hook all your leads into it.
Their rate 3.25, what's the current bonding rate for revenue bond, you know?
I don't know what it is now.
Through like Vermont or somebody.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be.
I haven't looked at it in a while. Last couple of
Check.
months, a little over 5.
I know the Community Development Block Grant, which is coming up in November. I mean, typically you want to drill this well in the winter. I mean, depending on what schedule we're at, if we would miss that date, I mean, you could apply for CDBG funds for it as well, but it kind of depends on the timing and when you guys are comfortable with what you want to do. At that point, we have to put the plans together, and then they have to go through the DNR, which I've had some there right now for a month and a half on a water system waiting for that to come back. So